let's go over to Singapore, a country that had initially received much praise for its containment efforts, but is now battling its second wave of infections. As of April 24th, the number of confirmed cases there surpassed that of Korea to stand at 11,178. Now, I have Vernon Lee, Director of the Communicable Diseases Division at Singapore's Health Ministry. Hello, Mr. Lee. And I have Simon Hopkins, CEO of Milltrust International in Singapore. Welcome, Mr. Hopkins.
Hello, good afternoon.
Mr. Lee, I'll start with you. As I just mentioned, Singapore is seeking to tackle an alarming second wave of infections. What is the situation there like right now?
So very good afternoon. And so the situation right now in Singapore, essentially, if you look at the number of cases that we have in the community, especially among Singapore residents, the number of cases is actually relatively low. They are in the teens up to 20 at the moment. However, we do have a larger number of cases among the foreign workers, especially in the foreign worker dormitories, of which we are trying to contain by rolling out different testing protocols to identify infections and also to manage those infections by providing them with the best available medical care. That has actually kept the number of deaths in Singapore to a very low number. We have now 12 deaths out of more than 10,000 cases.
Mr. Lee, Singapore's quick and efficient response was widely hailed as a success story in the early stages of the world's outbreak. Singapore has experienced the spread and stabilization of COVID-19 as well as a secondary outbreak. What kind of advice do you have for Korea?
Actually, the strategy that we have been having all across the board is actually to test and to identify cases as early as possible. And for every case that we identify, we would then isolate the case and do a lot of contact tracing to identify more cases. That's part of active case finding, and also to quarantine contacts so that we can contain the spread and to prevent spread from occurring. All of the measures that we have rolled out, in fact, are precautionary and also in proportion to the risk that we see, because we don't want to do too much or too little. But what we want to do is to stay ahead, 1 or 2 steps ahead of the spread of the virus and to be able to contain it. So I think the number of cases that we are seeing here in Singapore is very much due to our testing. And I understand that Korea had been doing a lot of testing around the coronavirus as well. And I think that's a good thing, because you test, you find cases, and you manage them, and then we can keep the severity and also the mortality rate low. And that is, I think, a very good strategy to have if resources permit.
Mr. Hopkins, from an economic perspective, would you support the easing or strengthening of social distancing here in Korea?
I think that Korea has been something of a model for the global economy. The relaxation of social distancing, the fact that restaurants are open and life is moving back to normal is a very good thing. I think that we are really past the phase, as Dr. Lee was pointing out. This is a function of testing. We are seeing many, many more people. The more tests you do, the more people you will identify in any country in the world who are infected. But infection does not mean death. And we really need to move away rapidly from the climate of fear and panic, because for the majority of people, this is not a disease that will end in even a serious illness and certainly not death. This is a disease that impacts the elderly and impacts the vulnerable, and those are the people that we need to protect. So I applaud the measures in Korea. And I think that we'll see many other countries following your example.
We hope so too. All right, Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Lee, thank you very much for making the time to join us live from Singapore.
Thank you.